Mhm. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How's the travel?
Well,
Fine.
alhamdulillah, we moved.
Good, good. Well done.
Yeah, yeah, thanks to Allah. And then this coming weekend, we have our family meeting for uh, for our family in USA.
Great. That's really nice thing to have fun with the family.
Paulina, welcome.
Hello.
Hello, good morning, good evening. Gabriella, welcome.
Good morning.
Hello, salam.
Alaikum salam.
Welcome, welcome.
Good morning.
Hello, hello, salam. We have 16 students in this class, so I admire all of you who have joined at this time, and hopefully we will all be getting used to this Google Meets. Last trimester in the summer when we started IKI Academy, we were using Zoom. So now we are using a different system, and hopefully it will be a good system. We'll see. I hope you are able to use it and to understand it.
I think it seems better than Zoom, to be honest. It opens quickly, it runs smoother. I think it's better, but we'll see.
Good,
As for
good.
me, this Google Meet is better because I work in project and a lot of meeting in Zoom only 40 minutes. It's very difficult to rejoin again. If we have only 15 participants, I have 50 or 40, and it's not good during training. Google Meet is better, as for me, for my work.
Good, good. Is that true for you, Paulina, also?
Yes, I think that Google Meet's better than Zoom.
How about you, Umida Khan?
To be honest, I think I got used to Zoom very much. And I have tried so many different platforms. They're good in their own way, but Zoom is the simplest and fastest. And I do agree there are some shortages, but regarding the 40 minutes, it's a free one. If you've got paid one, it will be never-ending story. And they're more customer oriented compared to other platforms. This one, I'm getting used to it, but still there are some points to improve compared to Zoom. But of course, it's not bad one. It is good. It's like if to compare, it comes after Zoom for me, and the rest of the platforms comes after the Google meeting. This platform. So it depends. I don't know. I think it's like individual thing. Probably why not get got used to it, but we will see if they improve certain features. Why not? At least like it's helping us to meet. So that's the main reason.
Wonderful. Well, I hope all of you have a chance to share what you think about Google Meets and Zoom to the people in charge, Dr. Ildus, Dr. Elmira. They will appreciate the feedback. As you know, this is session number 6 for this class, which means we have reached the halfway point for our course. That means we have accomplished already what we accomplished in the past, and then we have the rest of the class left. And I will try my best today to go over a variety of points. But my first question is, what have you chosen to be your paper topic? Can you share with us?
Can we send it today?
Yeah,
Or shall
yeah.
we say, yeah, okay. Because I have chosen, but I don't remember the my hero's name. But I have come to mind to write about her. But like to make sure that she's the one, I will like send you today. I have chosen actually.
Ah, good, good. Who else?
I would like to write about Sheikh Moza and compare with the activity of Jordanian princess. I forgot the name, Rania, because they make charity. They have a lot of social educational projects. I know a lot of information about it.
Very good, very good. Okay, thank you.
I've chosen Lady Zainab Evelyn Cobbold, who was the first European woman to go on Hajj. She was a leader of the British Muslim community in the 1930s when it was very small, and she campaigned to go on Hajj, and she wrote a book, and yeah, I've chosen her.
Very good. Paulina?
Now I haven't the time to search woman, but I plan to write about woman in the China because I research China, and I think it's be good.
Okay, thank you. We have Jenny joining us. Jenny, salam alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
I was
Good
just
to-
asking the students, welcome, about the topic they have chosen for the paper for this course. Can you share with us what you chose?
Yes, I have a classmate in one of our courses, and I wanted to write about her who embraced Islam later in her life.
Okay, very good. And what about for gender issues? Have you chosen a Muslim woman leader?
Not yet.
Okay.
So is that the topic we are supposed to write our paper on? I thought. Okay, I see.
Yeah. So what I was mentioning to all the students is since we have reached the halfway point in our trimester, I have put some information already about the paper and the requirements on the Moodle, on the learning management system, in our WhatsApp group, and also put the grade for this course, what it will be based upon. There will be the 5 assignments that I have asked you to do, and also the paper is worth half your grade for this course. And the paper, I have divided the assignment into different sections. So hopefully we'll get moving on each section. I'm not asking you to write a big research paper with all kinds of different background material. The idea is just to write the paper, even if it is not the best, but to get the ideas down and to make sure that we recognize some of the Muslim women leaders that are alive today or that recently passed away. So the important thing is to get it done rather than to have anything fancy or complicated. Okay, and try as much as possible to follow the schedule I have written down for the paper. And again, you can consult me on any part of the paper that you might need help with. And if you don't have too much specific information about the person you are writing about, write about her environment, her situation, what is going on during her context or in her context. Okay. And then also, you've already been asked to do 4 assignments. I put the 5th assignment, which is the last assignment, also on the WhatsApp group. I know it's early, but for those of you who want to start on it soon, fine, or who want to do it later when during the dates I have mentioned, because this assignment actually helps your paper, right? I asked you to provide 10 sources from the internet, and so you could just list those same sources in the bibliography section of your paper, along with the scholars we have studied in this class and any other sources you have used about your Muslim woman leader. Okay. Any
Sorry.
questions? Yes.
Yes, I have a question. 10 sources from the internet, can they include books or do they have to be internet sources?
They can be books if the book is available online. That's fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
brilliant. Thank
Good
you.
question. Yeah. So what I want to do today is to try as much as possible to cover many of the themes for this course and to hear your questions and try to answer them as much as possible. So this course is Islam and gender issues. So it has 2 parts. It has the Islam part and it has the gender part. Now, as a sociologist, when we teach about gender, what do we talk about? Well, we talk about, for example, how does your gender affect society? And how does society affect your gender? So if you are male or female or choose something else, okay, this did not come from nothing. When you were born, somebody told you what you are, okay? Some group told you what you are, okay? It is tied, for example, to your name. We do not choose our names, correct? Somebody chose our name for us. Why did my parents choose the name Omar for me? Why did your parents choose your name for you? There may or may not be a reason, but your name is associated with a gender, with male or female. Okay, so that's one identifier, right? The toys that you played with, or the toys that your parents gave you, or the gifts that you got during Eid, or the things that were given to you by your teacher, or by your relatives, or by friends, also, for the most part, are gender based. Okay, somebody gets a doll, somebody gets a horse. Why? Okay. Somebody is given a blue shirt, somebody is given a pink shirt. Why? Okay. Most families on earth, they don't really think about this kind of stuff. But of course, in sociology classes, we're always asking, what are people doing with each other and to each other? And we try to figure out what is motivating them to do that. We're not saying right or wrong. We're just trying to understand. Okay. So this idea that there's a certain color that is for boys and a certain color that's for girls, this is a social idea. Okay, it's not a natural idea. It's not something you get from your instinct. Okay, it's something that somebody teaches you, usually your parents or your school or your religious institution. In the United States, for example, if it is a baby girl, you get her a pink dress. If it's a baby boy, you get him a blue shirt. But these colors were not always like this. 200 years ago, it was the opposite. Okay, for example, and also what you wear, right? Females wear dresses, men wear pants. That was not always the case. Okay, or it changes from one society to another. So, for example, in Arab societies, men and women wear a long piece of cloth that covers their body. We usually call that in the West a dress. Well, men wear dresses and women wear dresses in the Middle East. That's normal. It's just a difference of color. Okay, for some reason, what men wear in the Middle East is white, and what women wear is black or some other color. But this is a social choice. Okay, it's not coming from the creator. It's not coming from our instinct. It's something society chose over time, and there could be different reasons for it. So, okay, fine. You can say this is true. This is reality. What's the problem? The problem, for example, comes when there are people who are cross dressers, right? A man wears something in a society that says, wait a minute, men don't wear that. Or a woman wears something in a society where the society says, oh, wait a minute, women do not wear that. Okay. So it took a very long time in the West for it to be acceptable for women to wear pants. And in many developing countries, it might be considered until today strange or aib or dishonorable or shameful for a woman to wear pants. Okay. If you look at when you fly in an airline, have all of you flown on an airplane before? Okay. So there are people in the airplane whose job is to take care of you, right? We call them stewards and stewardesses. Okay. Is there a difference between what they wear? Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Why? Okay, so sociologists ask these questions. It has nothing to do with what they are doing because both of them are doing the same thing. The men stewards and the women stewardesses, they're doing the same thing on the airplane. How come their dress is different? Okay, so the quick answer is, well, because one is man, one is woman. Well, then the second question is, why does that make a difference? Okay, should it make a difference? How does that difference in dress affect their job or people's perception? Okay, when it was in the 50s and 60s, even the 70s. Okay, a lot of times the airlines, like there used to be this big airline company called Pan Am, okay, which was very important at that time. Okay, it was the largest airline in the world at one point, I believe. And so they used to choose the women stewardesses mostly based upon how sexy she looks, how appealing she is. The ability to serve the passengers was secondary. Okay, they wanted to attract men who had money to fly on the airplane, and one way they used to attract men to fly on their airplane is to have very nice looking stewardesses. And by nice looking, you know, they have certain criteria. She has to be a certain height, she has to be a certain color, she has to have certain body proportions. Okay, so it was very sexist, right? Women were used as objects, as sex objects, as something to attract men. And you see this in the advertisements also. Like you'd see a American car advertisement in the 1960s, and it's this woman in a bikini next to a brand new Chevrolet car. Why would they do that? I mean, she's not driving the car, and mostly it was men who bought cars. So why is there a woman in a bikini next to the picture of the car, right? So they figured out that through advertising they can attract men by having a good-looking woman next to the product, right? They do that also in the past when they were selling cigarettes, right? They have this man who is a cowboy and he looks strong and he's the one smoking the cigarette. And so the assumption or the message they're trying to get across, if you smoke our cigarettes, you will be so handsome and so strong like this man. Okay, this is also sexist, right? It's using gender to sell something rather than to recognize that every human being is valuable and that the way you look and the image you have should have nothing to do with buying or selling a bottle of water or a pen or anything else. So when we teach something called sociology of gender, we're looking at many of these factors. but again, the question is, so what's the point? Why look at all these factors and what's happening with gender and the differences? And one answer is because it's interesting, but another answer is because sometimes there are problems in society. Okay. If a society, if there is agreement in society, if everybody understands and accepts what men should do and what women should do, you have less problems. But if there is a difference of opinion in society about what men should do and what women should do, then you get tension, you get conflict, sometimes you get violence. And unfortunately, throughout history, there has been a lot of violence against women, especially when they try to challenge or change or have something different in the gender role. Okay, so if you look thousands of years ago when humanity was starting out, okay, usually it was the men who went and hunted the wild animal, and the women gathered the fruits or took care of getting some vegetables and preparing them to eat. Now, why is that? Why not have the women go out and do the hunting and the men gather the fruits and prepare the food? Okay, why was there this gender differentiation thousands of years ago?
Women physiologically are weaker compared to men, so that might be one reason, because men are more stronger and can do better in terms of hunting and carrying stuff and building things. Of course, some women want to prove that they can do that as well, but still, not everyone can do that, because we are created in that way. We are weaker compared to men.
Okay, thank you, Midakhan. Jenny, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, that's a good point, physiological, and also, you know, in the history, women tended to give birth to many children, so they had to stay and nurse them for many, many years. So that prompted males to go out and hunt for the food supplies.
Okay, so these are very good points. There could be, it's just a matter of physics, right? A matter of strength. It could be a matter of child rearing, as you pointed out. You cannot, you know, have your 2-month-old infant in your hand and you're feeding it, and then you're going to run after, you know, a big elephant. So yes, so part of it is practical, part of it is biological. But let's say in a society where all women were strong and other people would take care of this tiny baby, would that prevent her from going out hunting? So again, this is a question. I'm not saying there's an answer to it. Okay, maybe she could have gone out hunting. You see, but you might have in the back of your head the notion that hunting involves killing, right? Death. Now, does it matter if a man kills or a woman kills? Well, if you recall, biologically, only women can bring life, correct? Only women can have babies. So women, over time, tend to focus on keeping things alive, okay? They're not in the business of death and killing, okay? Men, over time, tended to have a different kind of approach or attitude toward death, because you see, when women were taking care of the children and the food and the house, somebody was defending them. A defender must be willing to kill, okay? Whether it's defending against wild animals or against another tribe or something else. If you are willing to kill, then that makes it easier for you to be a hunter, okay? So then you see over time that men are more likely to be trained to be killers. We call them warriors or soldiers, okay? And women are more likely to be trained to be developers, nurturers, providing love, providing safety, providing life, okay? And you see that whether it's kings and queens, thank you, Jenny, or other types of roles. But again, just because it is the case at one point in history or one society doesn't mean that there's no change. There's a lot of change. So later on in human history, there was farming. Okay. What is so interesting about farming? When you look at farming for thousands of years in human society, men and women did the same thing. You see, men and women were in the field, they were preparing the dirt, they were putting the seeds, they were adding water, they were later on collecting the harvest. So it's very interesting in the transition from a hunter society to a farmer society, the roles became interesting because now both men and women were doing essentially the same thing: the cooking, the preparation of the food, and the work of the farmer. Did that affect society? Of course it affected society. And so you see, farming societies are much more egalitarian, which means what? Which means when men and women are more or less treated the same, they more or less wear the same, they more or less have the same amount of power. Okay. Later on, when humans became more urban, right, means more and more people started living in the city. We look historically, we see men have the power and the money in the city, and women in general do not. That's interesting. What happened to farming society where it's equal, and then suddenly you get urban, modern society, or industrial society, they call it. What happened? Yes, Umida Khan.
Can we say that farming society was equal? Can we say that? Because I think it wasn't equal. It was equal in terms of working at the farm, but in reality, it wasn't equal because woman was working at the farm, and then at the same time she was working at home, was looking after the baby and nursing and doing all the stuff, cooking and cleaning. Plus, she was working in the field. So it wasn't that equal. In terms of the men's side, it was equal. She was working together. But in terms of the second unpaid work, I mean, she was doing much more stuff anyway. So it wasn't that equal. In terms of working, yes, they were together, but still at home, mainly all the work was done by her anyway.
Thank you for that. Gabriela, you had your hand up.
Yes, I completely agree with what Umida Khan said. In farming society, women were doing double the work, but there's one thing about farming societies and city societies that's different. In, for example, an old rural society, people live more as a community. So, for example, looking after children, people would live near other women who would care for their children. The responsibility of caring for a child would be shared out. Now, when we go to cities and modern life, we have a nuclear family. Okay, so generally people, especially in, I'm going to say Western society, we don't have elders living near us. We don't live with our parents. Sometimes we don't live anywhere near any relatives. So generally the role of looking after the child is for the wife, the mother, because there is no one else to look after the child, and the husband goes to work. So I think the nuclear family does play a role in how gender is still very much in a specific role in city life these days.
Excellent. So, so this is fascinating, right? Because no matter how egalitarian a society might become, there are still some differences, and there are still some issues when it comes to relationships between the genders and the gender roles that sociologists talk about. And then as societies transition and these roles are challenged, then you get a whole host of issues. So, for example, this idea that a woman stays home and cooks and takes care of the children, a man goes and works and brings money and supports the family financially. So this is a stereotype or a notion about gender that maybe grew in the 50s and 60s and 70s. People assumed, oh, that was great and everybody was happy. Not true, okay? Even though the TV shows might show that, okay? And it's not just an issue for women, but it was an issue for many men as well. And then you get into the modern age and all these different ideas about who is deciding what people should do. And as women got more rights, as women's rights were more recognized, as women became to be considered more important in society, you start to see much more challenges to old ideas that people weren't allowed to discuss or question, that then become discussed and questioned. In the 60s, what happened was you got this thing called birth control, right? Now, women have more control after getting birth control over their bodies, over the decision to have a baby, over what will affect them for the rest of their life, right? So this also created a very interesting set of circumstances for gender roles, and women can have more say in many Western societies regarding whether they want to be moms or not, okay, which was a different issue before. And then you start to see things like challenges to the Catholic Church, right? Catholic Church was saying women should always so contraception is haram, is not allowed in the Catholic Church, so you can't use it. That means that if you're a husband and wife, you're going to have pretty much as many kids as possible. So whether a woman likes it or not, she's going to be forced into a more or less mother role. With contraception and with challenges to the Catholic Church, that changed. Was it accepted later on or not? Again, we see the different issues coming up with regard to society and gender. And so, okay, so that's sociology of gender. Then you have psychology of gender, right? What is psychology of gender? It's trying to understand, first of all, the differences between the brains of women and men. And second of all, what that means, okay? So before there were stereotypes that maybe men were smarter or maybe men had greater abilities. It turns out with modern psychological research, women have a greater ability to use their right brain and left brain together than the men. And women are more able to what's called multitask, right? To do many things at the same time without getting confused or without having issues, which men don't have that same ability. So if it's a matter of brain capabilities, women are ahead. What about knowledge, right? Acquisition of knowledge. Is there anything that prevents any woman from having as much knowledge as any man? No, right? Then why is it in history we have more men scholars than women scholars? Yes. Go ahead.
I think it was like in history and why stereotypes came out. Not many women had an access to education. It's all about money. Again, like in order to study, they had to hire a teacher to get a knowledge. That was one of the reasons. And females were more about household. They were about like working at home and taking care about children. For example, I can tell about my grandma. She was from a wealthy family, and even though at that time not many people used to study, her father hired a teacher, and she knew Arabic. She studied at the madrasa. It was like sort of private school. It was in 19th century. And they had an access, but again, it wasn't very common. So it was about money, and it was about parents, how they perceived the value of teaching, bringing up their children, and they considered whether it is important or not. And why there was why stereotype came, because women hadn't gotten access to knowledge, to education. Of course, they will be less smarter compared to the one who has got access, who is studying, who is reading and doing some work. So that was one of the reasons. But when the changes started, it showed that, as you said, women are not less smarter than men. They are more educated if they've got an access. They are more smarter, they are wittier, and more proactive in certain terms. So it's all about access and conditions and environment. I think the answer to the question why we have less scholars among women, if we talk about history, this is because I think they exist. They were females, women scholars, but of course they were less. But the information we don't have. Probably it was destroyed. Probably it wasn't written down. There's different kind of issues. But for example, from Central Asia, from I can talk from Uzbekistan. We had Nodre Begim. We had so many poets, scholars who were very who did amazing things in history. But it's all about promotion and talking about it. So and you have mentioned that the media also made its contribution regarding the promoting family values, like females supposed to be at home, men supposed to work and earn money. For example, from modern society, there is a movie Mona Lisa Smile. It reflects very well that the purpose of women studying is not to become someone valuable in society, but in order to get married. So it was all about the idea, the purpose of it, how they promote, how they present, and how they insist on people. I mean, how they're trying to position in people's mind. So it's very tricky and interesting question. I think with the changes, with the rights, with the conditions which we've got nowadays, it's going to be better for good. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Brother Akif, you raised your hand.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Yeah, I totally agree with position of Umida Khan. I also would like to add that it's more about how to say conditions which existed in society before. It's also like part of patriarch society that what Umida Khanum was mentioning, that women did not have access to for studying. And for example, like now during assignment for your subject, doctor, I was studying about female religious scholars in Shia Islam, and what I noticed, all of them who were like among them, they all grew up in how to say, like, or their husband he was scholar, or her father was scholar. So only in such ways they had access for studying. In another ways they had no access for studying, and it was not like how to say, they're not encouraged by their like environment, by their but by people around them. Means society was putting them in one position, was telling them that like how to say, for not being rude, that your task, give birth to kids, cook food, take care about your husband, that's all. That you don't have any other how to say, any other rights, or you have only duties like this. So, and only very few women, even it was like this in Western society also, actually they did not have access for studying, they did not have ability to study. So I guess it's all about this.
Thank you. Gabriela, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I want to add 2 points actually. One point is, has anybody heard of Leo Tolstoy's wife, Sophia Tolstoy? Leo Tolstoy is one of the classic Russian writers, hugely acclaimed. He was married to a woman called Sophia, who actually, he stole a lot of ideas from her. She had, I think, maybe 20 children or something incredible like this. When you read her diary, he was actually a very difficult man to be married to. He wanted her to keep the 20 children quiet at all times, so he could focus on his writing. Turns out he stole a lot of ideas from her, but in 2021, no one really knows her name. They just know his name. he took all the credit for his wife's work. She's one of these lost figures in history, Sophia Tolstoy. But I think also the biggest issue with women and not having education is to do with class as well. We can't underestimate class. Generally, when we have a successful woman in history or a very notable woman, she's of a higher class. She received opportunities that women in maybe working class or lower class societies didn't get. And we need to ask why. Why in working class societies are women not as encouraged to get an education or to be successful? This is the problem. Yes, money. Huge.
Excellent. Thank you for these contributions. And Jenny, you have also been adding some fascinating pieces of information. So really the answer to the question of why don't we have more women scholars in history is the reason is us. And I'm talking about men. Okay, men are the problem. Men are the reason there are less women scholars than there could have been. It has nothing to do with limitations on the brain or intellect or intelligence. The more women that are allowed to study, the more you'll get women scholars. Okay. Now I don't mean us, like specifically me and you and every man alive today. Some men get sensitive when I say that. I don't mind whether you accuse me of being somebody who is part of a group that has limited women. At any rate, whatever you want to use as an approach, the fact of the matter is we, society, limited women. It has nothing to do with internal limitations inside the women themselves. And then the question then becomes, why would we do this to our women? Okay, and what did society have to gain by limiting women? Yes, Akif.
Yeah, doctor. Actually, I would like to add about this what you said right now. That, for example, we have point in Quran that witness of one woman is equal to witness of half, like equal to half of witness of men, right? So when religious scholars trying to explain this position, they are saying that like they don't want to discriminate women, that women have the same like how to say, the same intelligence, same intellect abilities like a man, but they are more emotional, so they can like how to say, uh, not to be honest with their witnesses or something like this. So, but it's also kind of sounds like discriminative actually when I listen to such position. And they say we cannot change this because it's mentioned in Quran. And most of religious scholars, what I've read, they all mention that it's written in Quran, we cannot change it. So they say it have to be like this, that witnessing of women have to be equal to half of witness of men.
But we should also take into account the context of that verse as well. Especially in these times, women were subject to a lot of intimidation and a lot of pressure. I can't remember which scholar said this, but one of the reasons why it says there should be two women and not one woman is so the other one can sort of prevent her from being intimidated or being pushed in one way or another by a society that was mainly patriarchal.
Yes, so that brings us to the matter of religion and gender, right? The Quran and gender. So on the one hand, we have the modern study of men and women, sociology of gender, or the modern study of women and men's brains, the psychology of gender. Now we get into religion and gender, particularly the Quran and then the Hadith. We notice, again, as sociologists and as historians, that throughout time, many men specifically used religion as a way to oppress, suppress, or limit women, right? And in Muslim societies, unfortunately, in my opinion, many men use these verses about women's testimony or about men's responsibilities towards women. And it's still happening today, as Akif is mentioning. So men are using, abusing, misusing religion, whether it's the Catholic Church or Muslim imams or many other religions, to control, limit, keep women inside a certain arena that they're not allowed to go outside of. which raises a number of fascinating questions. Okay, again, aside from the issue of why it's right or wrong, it's the issue of why is this taking place to begin with, right? Why would men want to limit the testimony of women? Well, the claim is, well, they're more emotional. Is that a fact? How do you know this? Okay, have you done a study? Have you looked at various psychological studies of women? What does it mean to be more emotional? Are you trying to tell me men never cry? Men never get upset? Men never get angry? Isn't anger an emotion? Okay, why do wars start? Okay, again, there are a lot of these counterfactuals that men don't like to hear, but that are part of our human makeup. Yes, Jenny.
Just a follow-up question on what you're just saying now. How then do we battle verses like that are clearly, I mean, we're orienting toward patriarchal societies and are fitting that particular narrative? In our today's world, how do you apply the Quranic lens when it comes to reforming gender issues?
Yes, excellent. We have some hands raised. Yes, go ahead, Brother Akif.
Yeah, I can try to answer a question of Jenny if you allow. Um, Maybe you will agree with me, maybe you don't. Like what I've seen, most of religious scholars they say that what is written in Quran cannot be changed because what is written in Quran it's forever. It's like till the day of judgment, right? So they say we cannot change position, but we can change positions which are not directly mentioned in Quran. So such positions about witnessing, about inheritance, like which are discriminative about women, that they cannot be changed. But actually, I saw positions of very, very few, like it's very rare to find them. For example, I saw position of Ayatollah Yusuf Sani. He mentioned, like how to say, he developed concept of dynamic ijtihad, and he's saying that uh, society is developing, is changing. So using ijtihad, we are changing its approaches too. So he's saying that we have to make tafsir of Quran, interpret, like exegete verses of Quran, uh, how to say, using the conditions of modern society, using the context. So he's saying that, for example, these verses, like he's only one among Shia scholars, as I know, for example, who is exegeting these verses of Quran in another way. All, for example, scholars, they say that we cannot change it, it's written in Quran. But he's only one who is saying that uh, that these verses was sent in the time of Prophet. So it's related only for that cases in the times of Prophet. That nowadays situation is changed. He's saying that times women, for example, as Gabriela mentioned, for example, she can feel intimidated, for example, or she can feel like, for example, women they had lack of knowledge because they did not have access for studies. Actually, he was mentioning this position also, what we discussed just today. He was saying women and men are equal. We cannot say that men can like man is smarter or woman is smarter, and he's also actually only one scholar which I saw who is saying that woman doesn't need permission for going out. Woman can get the same type how to say like dia, yeah, blood money, that for killing women it have to be the same like for killing men, and also very a lot of positions which are how to say very rare to see, but he's only one as I know. So it's, I guess, one of the ways maybe his concept will become more common and other people will agree with this concept, for example. So it's one of the ways to develop this concept, what Janet mentioned.
Yes, Jenny, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all those. These are kind of very reforming ideas, right? Like, okay, how do we now reform our understanding of Quranic principles? And I do agree with this sentiment that, Quran, as much as lots of Muslims are forced to believe that it is for all times, in my opinion, not all of it is for all times, because it clearly rather addresses three types of audiences, which is like Muhammad, Prophet himself, his contemporaries, and then all humanity, right? So, but then there are verses like the ones within it comes to inheritance and regarding women being witnesses. Those type of verses, I still regard them as something that is addressed to all humanity. right? Regardless of what traditions and cultures we live in. So how, I just don't know, how do we reconcile with this idea? Because these kind of understandings about women are still carried throughout the history to our days even. Yeah.
Yes, Gabriella.
But I think one of the issues is the only thing that has changed is the way women are trying to frame ourselves. This can be an issue. So a lot of people will look at the Quran and will look at Hadith and will say Islam is very unjust to women. Why can't a woman be an imam? Why can't a woman do this, that, or the other? The real issue isn't why can't we be equal to a man, is why do we want to be equal to a man? Why is being a man the gold standard for women? And this is a very, very new idea. If we look back at our grandmother's generation, they didn't want to be the equal to men. They didn't want to have exactly what their husband wanted. This is something that I've noticed mostly in my parents' generation, at least in my country, my parents' generation. It's a very, very new idea. And to be honest, when I think about it, why? Why would we want to be exactly the same as a man? What's so great about that?
Yeah.
Sorry. I was just gonna respond to that. It's not necessarily about equality. Like, I am not proposing that idea, because I am actually opposing to the idea that comes of the feminism from the Western idea. It's just total bogus in so many ways. But still, like, when it comes to societal obligations and the ways how patriarchs are perceiving women and their roles and their opinions and their value in the human society comes from their understanding of the religious from the religious perspective of women's status. You know, this is why I'm not necessarily saying we have to be equally like holding all the positions and whatnot in societal in societies, but when it comes to expressing certain values and opinions and actually having them taken seriously is something that men should do, regardless of equality and whatnot. So that's what I'm saying. Like, how should we grapple with that? Because still, many men, even if they say, "Oh, we're all for equality," they still don't listen to women's voices. That's just the reality.
I think Omida Khan, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I just wanted to add, I think for some women, it's not about getting what man wants. No, I mean, well, what men have in terms of the equality, but in terms of the, most of the women are discriminated. Most of them discriminated, and they don't want to be a man. They want to have the same rights, the same attitude, and the same perception and acceptance as well. Because even though there are so many changes, still women are discriminated, and still even like getting a high position, they're doing it just for the balance, because it is the society demands more females as leaders. So they just speak up the ones who, I mean, who just like can follow and listen to them, not the one who is real leaders. Unfortunately, it's like that. They're just doing it for the sake of balance, because society demands that there should be females, and it has been always like that. Even in terms of like writers, there was one of the greatest writers, George Sand. She wrote a lot of great books, and this is man's name. She picked up man's name in order to publish her book, because even though she has written so many great books, it wasn't accepted. And it wasn't accepted only after changing her name and like introducing herself like as an agent. She could publish her books, and she became very popular under this man name, George Sand. And even in our century, nowadays we can say so, J.K. Rowling, she put it like J.K. Rowling in order to just to hide that this is like female, she's a woman. And in our world we have so many rights and have so many opportunities still, and she's not even from Central Asia. She's British, right? She's like from developed country. She's like in a society with totally different opportunities and conditions. Still there are stereotypes, still the discrimination, still there are certain issues which doesn't allow female women to breathe, to exist. That's why they're trying to demand more. They're trying to have the same rights, not to become like a man, just to exist as a human being, like and treated properly. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so yes, Gabriela.
I think ultimately the point that we're all going to, it's not actually a problem within religion. It's a problem with all societies and misogyny. Because even if someone is not religious or not Muslim, not atheist, they will use something else to degrade women. They will use any single thing. Some people will try to use science, saying that man's brain is bigger than a woman's brain. Some people will try and say that women's only role is to look beautiful. They'll reduce us to our appearance. The problem is culture and society. Why so many cultures and society have this problem with women, I do not know, but we can clearly see in non-Muslim, Muslim, atheist, religious societies, this exists everywhere, this discrimination against women. It's not a religious problem, it's a societal problem, and it's a cultural problem, unfortunately.
Good point. And so, so you see, it's a fascinating dynamic. Okay, so from a scholarly point of view, as scientists, as for example, sociologists or anthropologists, regardless of what our position is on the issue or what we think is right or wrong, we are looking at society and we are trying to understand society. And I think part of it has to do with admitting that the issue is, like you were all making clear, it's not a simple issue. Okay, anybody who tells you, you know, just read the Quran, it'll solve everything, doesn't know what they're talking about. Okay, or they make a statement that, you know, every wife should listen to her husband, all problems are resolved. This kind of nonsense obviously has been proven that it just doesn't work and it's the wrong approach. So part of it has to do with what questions are we asking? Okay, and depending on how you're phrasing the question, that's gonna perhaps lead the discussion in a certain way. And a lot of times, the person asking the question has assumptions that they're not stating or they're not being honest about. Okay, so if you look at this phenomenon that in sociology we call patriarchy, right? There's something called matriarchy and there's something called patriarchy. And patriarchy is the notion that men should be the responsible people in society, and that women under a patriarchal system are simply there to ensure that men can achieve the success and fulfill the roles that they need to fulfill. So this is problematic on many levels, right? And when a religious culture or even a non-religious culture adopts this way of running society as a patriarchy, you get all sorts of issues. And then religion is affected, right? Whether we like it or not, religion is brought in, even though it's not a religious issue, but religion is brought in to justify certain positions. Okay, so this verse in the Quran that has been creating lots of controversy and continues to create controversy, الرجال قوامون على النساء. And some interpreters, unfortunately, they interpret it as men are at a higher level than women, or men are above women. If you look at the Arabic word qawamun and you study it carefully, it simply means they have a responsibility. So actually, a better interpretation is men are servants of women. You see, men are supposed to provide women with what they need. Now, if you interpret the verse in the way I just mentioned, it's a very different kind of orientation. So why have so many men, so-called scholars, been, in my opinion, misinterpreting this verse? That's a fascinating question. And like you said, it has to do with patriarchy and misogyny and all kinds of other things. Yes, Brother Akif.
Yeah, doctor. I would like to mention that, for example, this point actually it's discriminating men because it put on us duty to take care about family. It doesn't mean that women have such duty. Yeah, women doesn't have such duty. For example, according in classical Islamic law, as I know, woman doesn't have a duty to, like, for example, if woman is working, it's her money. But if man is working, it's like family money. Let's call it like this. That because he have to spend them for family cares. He has, like, woman doesn't have a duty to take care about her husband, like buy her clothes and such stuff, for example. But man has such duty. So in this point, but no one is mentioning this, but actually it's discriminative to men, like by this point.
Okay, thank you for that. Um, People talk about rights and responsibilities, right? Um, modern Western society has a lot of focus on rights. What is my right? What are my rights? What are our rights? Traditional Muslim discourse has focused more on responsibilities. Okay, if you are a wife, this is what you have to do. If you're a husband, this is what you have to do. If you're a father, this is what you have to do. If you're a mother, this is what you have to do, and so on. Now, is there a problem with that? Yes and no. Okay, if social needs are fulfilled, then fine. But if there is a clash, or it leads to conflict, or people are being abused, or some part of society is being put down, then certainly it's problematic. Why aren't Muslims today speaking as much about rights as they speak about responsibilities? Well, in fact, many Muslims might even claim that, oh, this talk about rights is a Western notion. It's not part of our culture. This is very problematic because, for example, the concept of citizen in political science doesn't exist in traditional Muslim culture. We never talked about citizens. Okay, we talked about communities, and we talked about how a Muslim has to have deference to the people in charge. Okay, but we did not have this concept of citizen. Today, every Muslim, or most Muslims, are a citizen of some country, which entitles certain privileges, right, and certain rights. And Muslims like that. They have no problem with that. So in some ways, they are in favor of talking about rights, and in some ways, they are not. Same thing when you get this issue of femininity and masculinity, right? What is it that a woman is supposed to uh, be characterized as, and what is it that a man is supposed to be characterized as? So, for example, if a woman cuts her hair very short, then some people say, "Oh, she's becoming masculine." If a man starts to have a very soft voice and put on makeup, oh, they will say this person, this man is becoming more feminine. Well, as scholars, we problematize these things. What do you mean by masculine? What do you mean by feminine? And who's deciding? Okay, uh, it's not coming from God. It's not coming from instinct. Where is this coming from? Again, as sociologists, it brings us back to society. Society is deciding this. Well, who is society, and on what basis are they making these decisions? Okay, and the last thing I want to talk about before we take a 5-minute break is this issue of um, when you are a particular gender, that puts you in a particular place in society, in the economy, and in the political system. Unfortunately, this is the reality. Okay, and it differs from one country to another. Okay, so not only do we ask the question of why is that, but also how do we address that, and how to better deal with the issue so that in the end society becomes better and is headed in the right direction. So if you come to bathrooms, right, most societies, or many societies, have decided certain type, this type of bathroom is for women, and this type of bathroom or restroom is for men. Okay, this was something that was generally agreed upon. Now it is being challenged. Okay, some people are saying, why should a woman only go to a woman's bathroom? Why should a man only go to a men's bathroom? And you have a lot of discussion about this topic, and I'm sure every one of you has thoughts about this topic. But then if you look at economics, and the question becomes, are there certain jobs that men are not allowed to do? Are there certain jobs that women are not allowed to do? Okay, well, it depends on which period of history you're talking about, which society you're talking about. Even in modern society, you think this problem has been resolved, not necessarily. Okay, so for a long time in the United States, there was a big discussion about women in the military, right? Are we going to allow women to be soldiers or not? And sometimes Muslims got involved in this discussion, and they would come up with all kinds of theories, whether so-called women are weaker, or which is of course wrong, or so-called women can be raped if they are taken as a prisoner, which well, men can be raped too. So this is not even a point. Or women will not be able to kill other people, which is as much of a problem with men. Many men are not able to kill unless you train them to do that, right? So all these points that were raised when women were being considered for all military positions in the U.S. Were raised and debunked, but people still have this kind of controversy. Yes, Brother Akif.
Doctor, I wanted to ask, but in general, women are physically more weak. I mean, it's like biology. It's not like, no, I don't want to offend any woman. I mean, there are a lot of women who can beat me, most probably, but just questions that, in general, how to say, average man is stronger than average woman. I mean, physically, I guess it's like fact. It's not like, so I don't think it's point.
So how many men and women exist in the world today, Brother Akif?
Like more than 7 billion, as I know.
Okay, and you went to every single one of them and they did some physical test to make sure which is strong and which is weak?
No, but it's like biology.
No, I mean, I talked to biologists. Biologist says this is nonsense, okay? There are women who are strong, women who are weak, men who are strong, men who are weak. Who cares about the averages? If you take your daughter and teach her martial arts, she's going to be stronger than the man who takes his son and doesn't teach him martial arts. And why is this even a point? Who cares? I mean, some men can lift 1 pound, some men can lift 100 pounds. Why does that matter?
I think it's true though, biology, hormonally and biology, and also the things our bodies go through are not the same. The average man, I'm talking on average, his arm span is larger than a woman's arm span. His weight is heavier than an average woman's weight. Hormonally, women go through so much every month that would render us physically unfit sometimes to engage in battle. Also, pregnancy. A woman sometimes doesn't know if she's pregnant or not. Engaging in battle would be very dangerous in that sort of situation. The postpartum period as well. A woman is very physically vulnerable. We can't say that while some women are very physically strong and whilst some men are very physically weak, that's comparable. No. On average, men are better equipped at physical activity than women. Not always, but generally speaking, this is true.
Yes, Jenny, you wanted to say something?
Well, they might be physiologically different, but again, what is the end result of using the power that we're given? If they can bring the same outcome and result, I don't really see a point of stressing so much on the difference,
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I pointed out, women can use both halves of their brain much better than men. Okay? So what? When a woman is pregnant, she can't shoot and kill people. Well, when a man is sick, he can't shoot and kill people either. Okay? If a man breaks his leg, then the woman whose leg is not broken is going to be stronger. So what? I mean, what's the end point? If a woman is trained to be a soldier and she's trained to be a good soldier, she can do soldiering. Okay? If a man who's an incompetent, weak, feeble-minded person, he will never be a good soldier. So what are we comparing? And why are we making this comparison? Okay? Throughout history, there have been women who are very strong, men who are very strong. What are the percentages? Why does it matter? Okay, we are not interested necessarily in making judgments as much as we are interested as scholars in looking at a problem in society, finding out what's causing this problem, and then finding a solution. Okay, the average man, for example, cannot handle the decibel level of a child crying. Okay, so he's weaker. Okay, does that mean he cannot, take a bottle and put it in a baby's mouth? I mean, these things. I'm not just belittling any question or saying these are bad questions, but I'm saying these arguments have to be disentangled. Okay, and they have been used. Okay, but they have also been abused, just like we talked about. The Quranic verses have been used and abused. Okay, and they don't really lead us toward a constructive path. Okay, the arguments about averages, for the most part, don't tell us anything, because, by the way, how many people enter the military in any country? Less than 1% of the population. Okay, so what if 55% of men are, 36.7% more likely to lift a 5-pound weight? So what? The notion here is, let's try to understand what the real problem is. Okay, why are people resisting women in the military, including Muslims? Do we recognize the fact that women were fighting as soldiers with the Prophet, peace be upon him? Is this true? Yes. Okay. Why do we conveniently ignore that fact? Women were soldiers from the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Not only did he not prevent them, he encouraged them to be in the Muslim army. And he encouraged them not to be only nurses and support team members, but also fighters, soldiers. He told them, pick up the sword and defend and kill. This is the Prophet, peace be upon him, who was the most peaceful man on earth. Here, then, we get to notions of patriarchy and how the verses of the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet are interpreted or ignored or misinterpreted. Here, we'll take a 5-minute break, and I'll see you in 5 minutes to continue our discussion, our great discussion on Islam and gender issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome. Thank you all for participating in the class and joining in our discussions. And I encourage everybody, especially the people who have not participated as much before, to join in and give their opinions. Every opinion is valued in this class. Every comment is taken seriously. So please take that into consideration. I want to talk about the readings for this course, but before I do that, any questions or remaining issues you wanted to raise?
So far, so good for me. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. And Jenny, you sent us this wonderful book on the women scholars in Islam. We appreciate that. And I really appreciate all of you sharing in the WhatsApp group material that you think is of relevance to this class. I thank you for that, and I hope everybody can benefit and it continues. Okay. Anything else anybody needs to raise? Good. So at any rate, there are some scholars that are important in my own humble opinion for understanding Islam, and especially understanding Islam and gender. One of them is the late Al-Marhum Dr. Ismail Raji Al-Faruqi and his wife, the late Dr. Lois Lamia Al-Faruqi. They spoke a lot about Islamic culture, Islamic civilization, Islamic arts. The book written by Dr. Ismail Faruqi, one of them that I have asked you to look at for this class, is Islam, Religion, Practice, Culture, and World Order. A little bit of a complicated book, but I think it raises a number of important points. One of the points, like I had mentioned in Anthropology of Islam class, that Al-Faruqi likes to underline is the idea of civilization. What is civilization? If we think of civilization as a human construct whereby people are valued in terms of education and intellect and good behavior and respect for each other, so good character traits and a cohesive society and a society that aims towards improvement and progress. So then we can talk about civilization. Why is that important for Muslim culture or Muslim societies or when discussing Islam? According to Al-Faruqi and his wife, or Al-Faruqi and her husband, the idea of civilization is so important because it helps us frame the debate in a way that is constructive. You see, regardless of what you think of men or women, at the end of the day, we can either promote ideas that make our civilization more successful, or we can choose not to. Okay? So what kind of ideas make civilization more successful? Respect for everybody. What kind of ideas makes civilization less successful? Part of society puts down another part of society, right? So whether it's racism, whether it's ageism, whether it's sexism, whether it's other ways of putting one part of society down and another part of society up, this has proven to be a problem for society. So how does that relate to gender? If we want all society to be successful, and if we want all society to be healthy, then there has to be good gender relations. This is just a sociological fact. Okay, when there's tension and conflict between men and women, for whatever reason, then this hinders progress and hurts civilization. So, if we want progress, if we want to have a stronger civilization, if we want a stronger society, one of the things we have to do, or human beings have to do, is to make sure there is harmony and there is peace and there is cooperation between all parts of society, but especially men and women. Okay? Now, what's the problem, or where's the problem, or why isn't that happening? These are the sociological and anthropological questions that can be asked. Why, as we mentioned earlier in class, why would women not be allowed to study? And especially, I mean, this is done by many types of men, but especially by men who claim to be religious. For example, one of the big issues for the Taliban in Afghanistan in the past and today, they don't want women to go to school. Okay. Salafis and Wahhabis in Saudi Arabia and in other countries, they don't want women to be educated. Okay. You see that with extremists in Iran, extremists in Africa, extremists in Asia, extremists in South America, extremists in Europe. The men want to keep women less knowledgeable. And many of them claim this is what Islam wants. So first of all, you have the issue, the problem of keeping women uneducated or less educated. And then you have a compounded problem of justifying that through religion. Now, are smart women dangerous for the government? Yes, if it's a dictatorship, of course. Dictatorship doesn't want anybody to be educated, actually, whether it's men or women. But usually dictatorships are led by men. And so you have an issue with freedom, right? Educated people demand more freedom. Ignorant people are less in a position to know their rights and to ask for freedom and to demand freedom. So why is it in the interests of some strong men to keep women weak? How does that help them? Why is it a good thing for some of these dictatorial type men to keep women weak? Part of it is fear. Yes. I mean, men, deep down, they don't want to admit it, but they're afraid of women. Okay. They're afraid of what women can do, and they're afraid of being exposed by these intelligent and strong and educated women about how these men are actually afraid, and in reality they are weak. They don't want that to be known. And women who are educated can basically and effectively expose these weaknesses in men. Okay. And then why is it, or how is it that religion is used to justify this? Okay, so if you go to many extremist societies, whether it is Saudi Arabia or Iran or Afghanistan today, you will hear a lot of rhetoric about how, Islam requires women to be at home and to take care of the children. Yes, Gabriella, please.
I think this boils down to toxic male ego.
Yeah.
Toxic masculinity, which is this idea that the man should be more knowledgeable, should be better than the woman in every single way. Now, why is this used in religion? Some men do not like a woman who is more knowledgeable than them. Okay, they have self-esteem issues. Something very strange is going on. Now, why would they use religion? What can be more powerful than saying, look, even God is on my side? Unfortunately, this abuse of religion is not exclusive to Islam. Yes. I'm trying to think of any religion that I know of in this world who don't try and use religion to justify abuse of women or justify withholding rights from women as well. It's a very horrible common problem.
Absolutely. And so you see trends in different faith traditions, whether it's the Abrahamic faith traditions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, or animist faith traditions, or pagan faith traditions, or other traditions. They use their religion and the power of religion to create differences and hierarchies and enable men to do more things and disable women from doing many things. So you see some synagogues, they use Judaism to prevent women from going to worship in the synagogue. Some churches, they use the power of religion to prevent women from attending or reaching higher levels in the church service. You have many mosques, masjids, Muslim religious institutions that either 100% prohibit women from even coming to the mosque, or if they come, they are assigned certain areas, usually not as prominent areas in the mosque as men. So it's not limited to Islam, of course. But if Muslims claim that Islam is the most civilized and the most advanced religion, then the burden of proof is even greater. On, if you think or you claim that your religion is the best, then why is that not manifesting itself in gender relations? This is one of the questions that is asked. The way Farouqi answers it, the way Dr. Lois answers it and Dr. Ismail answers it, is by saying, look, first of all, this notion that women should be lower and men should be higher, this is not an Islamic idea. It never was and never will be. According to the Farouqis, Islamic civilization, beginning with the Quran and the traditions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, always considered both men and women as something that was created by God, and Allah gave the responsibilities to men and women to be the promoters of goodness on earth, and God will hold every man and woman accountable. And these gender differences, they don't exist in the Islamic tradition in theory. Of course, in practice, yes, Muslims started to do things that are against the, according to Farouqis, against the Islamic way of thinking, against Islamic civilization. And so those so-called Muslim scholars or imams or leaders that claim that the Quran elevates men above women or gives men more privileges than women, according to the Farouqis, this is a misunderstanding. Okay, those who claim that the Prophet, peace be upon him, was promoting patriarchy and putting down women, again, according to the Farouqis, this is wrong. Okay. Now, not everybody agrees with the Farouqis. I happen to agree with them, but many scholars, they don't agree with the Farouqis. However, the point of the Farouqis is, listen, if you want to have civilization, if you would like Muslims to be civilized, if you want Islamic civilization to succeed, then you should not be making these groundless gender differentiations. Okay, there should be no such thing as women are only allowed to do these things in society and not allowed to do these other things, or men have to be the people in power and women cannot. According to the Farouqis, these are wrong notions. They were taken from other cultures, other societies, and incorrectly incorporated into Islam. Now, as you know, every religion has the principles, right? And then there's the people who apply the principles. So the Quran is a book of principles. The Muslims who apply these principles are then judged based upon their behavior. Now, if Muslims did everything the Quran said, many people would claim the world would be a better place. So then the question becomes, why aren't Muslims doing what the Quran tells them to do? Assuming that the interpretation of the Quran is correct. Okay, so this is a very important question that the Farouqis raised, and I asked you, remember to look at that videotape, the debate on Islam is a religion of peace, right? And you saw how there are these different layers of understanding and misunderstanding the Quran, and then once you understood or misunderstood the Quran, how do you apply it? Okay, and same thing with the traditions of the Prophet Muhammad. So if you think the Quran is a violent book and then you misapply it by creating wars or hurting people or engaging in conflict, so that's one huge problem. But if you assume the Quran is a book of peace, but then you look at what Muslims are doing, they're not really doing a good job of spreading peace according to some analysts and commentators. So that's a different kind of problem, maybe a bigger problem or lesser problem. We can debate that, but it is a problem nonetheless. Okay, what is the solution according to the Farouqis? Teach Muslims their own civilization. According to the Farouqis, if Muslims truly understood Islamic civilization, we would have less gender problems. We would have less problems of every kind. Okay, and this is something that is a theme throughout the writings of the Farouqis. Now, I also asked you, and you can use this book, you could use Farouqi's book when you're writing about Muslim women leaders to bring out the notion of what are some of the difficulties that Muslim women face when trying to become leaders, both from within the Islamic society and outside of Islamic society, and the role that Islamic civilization in the past played in promoting women to high positions of leadership and scholarship and contribution to society. And then later on, with the decline of Islamic civilization, or the so-called decline of Islamic civilization, the kinds of difficulties that women faced and continue to face, like we saw in the conference from Africa, and how it was highlighting that yes, Islam gives women a lot of rights, but Muslims are not always honoring those rights. Okay, so even the Muslims who accept that men and women have rights, they might not apply them to the level that need to be applied. Okay, Jenny, you're talking about how there's a case with the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the claim that revelation is only for men, and then later verses contain men and women. Yes, so you have differences between Medina surahs and Mecca surahs, and you have differences in the Quranic terminology and how it's addressing. But taking the Quran as a whole, according to Al-Farouqis, makes it very clear. There is no basis for claiming men can do things that women cannot, or women should only be allowed to do certain things while men should not be given restrictions. According to the Farouqis, this is not from Islam, no matter how you want to interpret it. Now, if you look at Alwani, Dr. Taha Alwani, may God rest his soul, okay, he was very interested in interfaith relations, okay, and in breaking down the barriers between different religions, right? Over time, religions have been in conflict, and there have been wars, and there has been tension. Dr. Taha Alwani is saying we should do our best as a religious community, as a Muslim community, to go forward and talk and discuss and share with other religious traditions, particularly Christianity and Judaism. And so he was promoting the idea of interfaith relations a lot, especially later in his life. And what's interesting is when you have a closer relationship between religions, it reduces a lot of the tension between genders. Not many people have looked at this, but more and more research is showing that reducing tension in different ways also reduces issues between men and women, or gender-related issues. As more and more people discuss and try to understand what the Creator has wanted for us, the more people realize that there really shouldn't be these barriers between genders. Differences, yes, we recognize the differences without making those differences as an excuse to put anyone down or restrict people. So traditionally, people might say, oh, women are pregnant and they have kids, therefore we should restrict them. No. Yes, women are pregnant and have kids. End of discussion. Let them do whatever they want to do. Why put any restriction on them? They can decide what they want to do. Okay. So why it's hard for people to incorporate this, or to assimilate this, or to come to terms with this is also a very fascinating question in terms of sociology and anthropology and gender relations. And the way Dr. Taha Jaber Alwani answers it, he says, look, just like you have artificial divisions between religions, okay, you can have artificial divisions between men and women. This is part of the human condition. We create harmony and we create peace, but we're also capable of creating conflict and divisions. Where does the conflict and where do the divisions come from? Very interesting question. These are political issues, economic issues, social issues, psychological issues, right? How did Islamic civilization solve it? Well, interesting, because if you look at Islamic civilization, women and men were encouraged to be educated from a young age, right? Young girls and young boys were sent to what's called the Kutab, school for teaching the Quran. And so young girls and young boys memorize the Quran. Does that matter? According to Alwani, yes, it matters a lot. Because in order to understand Christianity and Judaism and to have better relationships between Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, Muslims have to know their own religion first. Just like Christians have to know their own religion before they can have interfaith dialogue, Jews have to understand their own religion because before they can have interfaith dialogue. Dr. Alwani said Muslims must understand their own religion before they can have interfaith dialogue. Because if you don't know your own faith, how can you appreciate any other faith, right? And the beginning of understanding of Islam is the Quran, and the beginning of understanding the Quran is memorizing the Quran, which is what happened back when Islamic civilization was great. Regardless of what your language was or culture was, your parents sent you to a Quran school, a kutab, and you just memorized the Quran. Now, you didn't understand any of it because you were too young at that point. We are children who are studying the Quran when we were very young in that case. They didn't understand the Quran, but when you memorize the Quran and then later deal with scholars who help you understand the Quran, you have a foundation. It's just like Shakespeare. If you've never read any Shakespeare and somebody wants to explain to you about Shakespeare, it's very hard. It's much better if you first have read and understood and memorized Shakespeare, then you can have a discussion about the great things that Shakespeare, the great British poet, said in his plays. Okay, and we have about 15 minutes left to class. I will summarize what Dr. Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman said about gender issues through his very interesting booklet called Marital Discord. Okay. Tension or conflict between husband and wife. Okay. So there's a very famous verse from the chapter of women in the Quran, Surah An-Nisa, that talks about if you are involved in a situation where the wife is creating problems for the family, then what do you do? And this verse goes through some different steps of how marital conflict, serious marital conflict, is resolved. Part of it involving advice, part of it involving not sleeping in the same bed. And then the last part is what the Quran, the word in the Quran is "udribuhunna." Now, this word daraba has many meanings. Most of the scholars, and we're talking about the male scholars who have interpreted this verse, say it means you hit your wife. Okay, you physically punish your wife. And some scholars say, well, you shouldn't hurt her. You should just take a little stick, the size of a pen, and you just go like that. But it all involves physical violence. Okay, Dr. Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman says this is utter nonsense. This is rubbish. The word daraba in the Quran has 23 meanings. Okay, and in this context, it means you leave the house. Okay, you separate, you physically exit, and you let the wife live in the house without you, the husband. So daraba in this context means you leave. Okay, and he makes it very clear how in Arabic this is a very legitimate and a well documented meaning of the word daraba. So instead of meaning hit, physically punished, it means you leave her alone. Okay, and we should really go over this verse and read it in context, but I'll save that for another class. But if any of you have this verse in front of you, can you read it to us?
Do you want the English translation of it? Or
Yeah.
hang on 1 minute. I'll just find it now.
So we're talking about verse 34 in the chapter on women.
Yeah, I found it.
Okay, can you please read that for us?
Yes. So in the Sahih International, it goes for that particular verse. Men are in charge of women by right of what Allah has given one over the other and what they spend for maintenance from their wealth. So righteous women are devoutly obedient, guarding in the husband's absence what Allah would have them guard. But those wives from whom you hear arrogance, first advise them, then if they persist, forsake them in bed, and finally strike them lightly. What if they obey you once more? Seek no means against them. Indeed, Allah is ever exalted and grand.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm looking at the Arabic original of this verse, and the way it's been translated in most so-called interpretations is very, very problematic. Many, many words in this verse are mistranslated or misconstrued or misunderstood or lots of, I guess,
So
violence. Sorry, go ahead.
my question is because it right before that yadribun, right? Then it already mentions leave them in the bed. So why there is a need to repeat this verb?
Okay. Actually, the difference is اهجروهن في المضاجع. Don't sleep in the same bed. Okay, so you're in the same room, right? But not in the same bed. Okay, in other words, don't have sex with each other. And then the third point, if the problem is not resolved, the man leaves the house,
Okay.
right? So it's a higher layer or a stronger layer of physical, creating a physical separation. Okay, it's not separation in terms of heading toward divorce. It's just physically, you have to advise, and then if that doesn't work, then you physically are not sleeping in the same bed, but still in the same house. The third thing level is if things have not been resolved, you leave the house. The man leaves the house. Okay, so Dr. Abdul Hamid, again, when you read the booklet, it's a fascinating discussion that Dr. Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman has about this. And I will just raise certain points so that when you read this booklet, you have this kind of background context. You see, this verse is one of the most contentious verse with regard to gender relations in human history when it comes to interpretation of the Quran. Okay, it begins with the discussion we had earlier of men. So it's a lot of times it's interpreted men are a degree over women, or men have a higher level over women. The word qawamun, as I said, simply means you perform your responsibility toward women. It doesn't mean higher level. Now, the verse then goes on to say God has made levels above others based upon your payment. So this is a very interesting economic aspect. Okay, who is providing financial support? Well, if the husband is providing financial support, then the wife is dependent on the husband for finances. But if the wife is providing financial support, then the husband is depending on her for finances. The verse allows for both. Okay? And so the verse can be interpreted as saying whoever is providing the finances is responsible, and the other party needs to recognize this responsibility. Okay? And then it goes on to say that the chaste women, the believing women, the women who keep secrets properly in place based upon what Allah has guided, are the kind of women that this verse is promoting. Okay, and those then it goes on to again raise this controversial issue of nushuz. Okay, Jenny, when you read it, the interpreter interpreted as arrogance, right? If the wife is arrogant, then the husband has to go through different steps. Nushuz is not arrogance. Nushuz, the Arabic word nushuz, does not mean arrogance. Okay, it means a lot of things that that can be translated into English, but essentially, nushuz means engaging in unacceptable social conduct. Okay, for example, if the wife is flirting with other men, so this is nushuz. This is unacceptable marital conduct. Okay, if you're married, you're not supposed to be flirting with other women if you're the husband, or with other men if you're the wife. So what if she's flirting? And what do we mean by flirting? Flirting is the English word that means trying to attract the opposite sex, right? Trying to attract the opposite gender, okay, for
Okay.
sexual reasons. Yes?
So follow-up question then. I'm just really curious how you see it in Arabic. Okay, imagining that a woman is, as one of the translations said, ill-conducted, nushuz, right? Is flirting with other men. Why is there a need to mention leave, forsake them in bed? And why did God find necessity to mention in bed particularly, whereas leaving the house as an object from which they were supposed to leave is not mentioned in this verse? Like, knowing the ambiguity, I mean, God is all aware, right? So I'm sure there's a wisdom behind it, but I'm just like, why leave such an ambiguity when people can interpret it in so many different ways?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. And I don't really have an answer to that question. A lot of the Quran is ambiguous, okay? I'm sure there's a reason God made it ambiguous. Some interpreters or some scholars say the ambiguity is there in order to give us room for figuring out what the best thing to do at the time is in terms of your own social and economic and political context. Okay. Now, when the Quran is saying this, why mention bed but not house? I don't know. Maybe it's because that's what Arabs did at that time. You see, the Quran is not saying this is something you have to do in the same way, in the same context, with every family under every condition. The Quran is giving a way to deal with a problem. Okay? And this again is what Dr. Taha Alwani and Dr. Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman kept telling people, is that when you interpret the Quran, you cannot make the claim that this is the only way to deal with any specific type of problem. It is one of the ways, okay? And so one way to deal with marital issues, if your wife is going around flirting, is this. It's not the only way, but it is a way that has been shown by God to be productive, depending on how you define the word productive, and functional, right? The Quran emphasizes the family unit. And this is what we talk about in the book I co-published with Dr. Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman and my father. The Quran emphasizes keeping the family intact and as a cohesive unit. Anything that threatens the family is problematic according to the Quran. Okay? So if the husband is not respecting the husband-wife relationship, or the wife is not respecting the husband-wife relationship, there's an issue. Okay? Now, Islam already has ways of dealing with adultery. Islam already has ways of dealing with, sex outside of the married context. Islam already has ways of dealing with infidelity. Islam already has ways of dealing with lying. Okay? So this verse is not trying to add a different way of doing that. It's talking about other kinds of problem. Okay? Flirting is a problem that is not a criminal offense in Islam. Okay? There's no punishment for flirting. Okay? It's misconduct. Okay? It's unbecoming of a husband or wife to do that. But you can't take your husband or wife to court for flirting. Okay, what you can do is, according to Quran, go through certain levels of dealing with the problem. And one way or one set of instructions that the Quran provides is what we see in this verse. Is this the only way? No. Does Islam allow for developing different ways for addressing the issue? Of course. Okay. The Quran says, you know, if you have a problem with war, sign a peace treaty. Okay. Quran says if you don't want to go with war with another group of people, you sign a peace treaty. Is that the only way to prevent war? No, there's all kinds of ways. But the Quran is saying this is a way, and it's worked in history, and if it works for you, do it. So one way of understanding the Quran is the Quran is giving us principles. Okay, don't necessarily focus on the physical, actual steps to solve a certain problem in a certain way. Okay, among the Israelites, a person committed murder, and they didn't know who the murderer was. So God told them, slaughter a cow and throw parts of the cow at the dead person, the murdered person. Then that person will come alive and tell you who the murderer was. Okay, is that how we deal with murder today or at any context? No. That was a specific context that the Quran is saying that was how the problem can be resolved, and it was resolved. Here, the Quran is giving you a different context and telling you a way for it to be resolved. Is it the only way? In my humble opinion, no, it's not the only way, but it can be a very effective way, and we can develop it if we want to. But we have to agree, first of all, on the principles, which is where Professor Al-Farouqi comes in. So, for example, we have to agree before we can solve any problem that there has to be mercy and kindness and love. Okay? Al-mawadda wal-rahma. Quran talks about mawadda al-rahma, mercy and kindness. If there's no mercy or kindness, all these other solutions, they don't work. They will never work. Okay? Any issue between husband and wife, if there's no mercy and kindness, then you can't go anywhere. Okay? Because when there's hatred and when there's distrust, you can't solve any problem. So there are fundamentals that the Quran talks about and that the Prophet, peace be upon him, taught us. The fundamental principles, okay? The basic principles. First, we have to agree on the basic principles before we solve any gender problem, any political problem, economic, social, psychological problem. Agree on the basics. One of the basics is there has to be mercy and kindness. Then you can build on that civilized dialogue. Okay, there has to be civilized discussion between husband and wife, not accusatory, not character assassination, not putting down the person. It's the problem that has to be addressed. If you go to counseling, okay, when there's issues between husband and wife, a lot of times they'll tell you, don't talk about the husband being wrong or the wife being wrong. Talk about the problem. What is the problem? Both husband and wife are trying to resolve the problem. Keep the problem within its own context, then we can start to deal with it. I think we are coming to the end of our class time. You've raised some very important issues. Some of them are very sad. Some of them are very eye-opening. Okay, I appreciate all your involvement, and inshallah we will continue the discussion about the Islam and gender issues. Please focus on your paper as much as possible. I'm not looking for perfection. Just write whatever you can, and that's all I'm asking you to do. And if you have any questions, then after class, I will always be available, inshallah. Thank you very much. May Allah bless you. Take care. Salam. And have a great day or great night. Until we meet again.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much.
Have a
Thank
good
you
day.
very much. Do take care, everyone.
Thank you very much.